The invitation arrived in a pale pink envelope, the kind my mother only used for weddings and church events. My name was written on the front in her careful cursive, the loops of each letter precise, almost trembling. I remember staring at it longer than I should have, my thumb tracing the ink, as if I could feel warmth through paper. Inside was a simple card. We'd love to celebrate your birthday properly this year. Family dinner, 7 p.m. Don't make other plans. Mom and Dad. It shouldn't have meant so much. But it did. My parents weren't the sentimental type. Birthdays in our house had always been efficient, cake after dinner, a practical gift, maybe a side hug. After I moved out 3 years ago, the distance between us grew thicker than the walls of my tiny apartment. They never said they disapproved of my career shift, of my decision to leave corporate accounting for freelance design. They never openly criticized my apartment in the city, my independence, my long-term boyfriend who didn't fit their neat, traditional mold. But silence can be louder than words, so when they asked to host a proper birthday dinner, something fragile inside me bloomed. Maybe this was their olive branch. Maybe they were finally proud. Maybe I had spent too long assuming the worst. I bought a dress I couldn't quite afford, deep blue, soft, elegant. I even ordered my own cake from a boutique bakery because my mother never remembered I preferred chocolate over vanilla. It felt symbolic. I'd bring something sweet to the table. When I pulled into their driveway that evening, I noticed there were more cars than usual. My brother's truck, my aunt's sedan, my best friend Clara's car. My stomach fluttered. They had really planned something. I walked up the steps, balancing the cake box carefully, rehearsing gratitude in my head. Don't cry. Just say thank you. Keep it light. The door opened before I knocked. My father stood there, not smiling, just stepping aside. Come in. The air inside felt still, too still. No music, no laughter, no scent of dinner cooking. I stepped into the living room and froze. Chairs were arranged in a circle, not around the dining table. In the middle of the room, my mother sat upright, hands folded tightly in her lap. My brother leaned back with crossed arms. Clara avoided my eyes. My boyfriend Daniel stared at the floor. My aunt and uncle sat side by side like witnesses in court. Even my boss, Mr. Reynolds, was there. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. Is this a surprise? I asked weakly. Behind them, taped to the wall, was a banner. We love you enough to tell you the truth. My hands began to shake. The cake box slipped slightly, tilting in my grip. My mother inhaled deeply, the way she used to before delivering bad news. Sweetheart, please sit down. I didn't move. What is this? My father's voice was steady, controlled. It's an intervention. The word hit harder than a slap. An intervention. On my birthday. A strange buzzing filled my ears. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to laugh, to stand up, to say this was ridiculous. He didn't. My mother gestured to the empty chair in the circle. We're all here because we love you, she said, and we're worried. Worried about what? I finally stepped forward, placing the cake on the coffee table like it was evidence in a trial. My heels echoed against the wooden floor as I lowered myself into the chair. Every face around me looked rehearsed. Prepared, my mother began. We've noticed a pattern in your behavior, she said gently. You've become unstable. The word felt foreign. Sharp, my brother cleared his throat. You jump from decision to decision, quitting your stable job, moving apartments twice, starting fights with Daniel. I looked at Daniel again. He finally spoke. It's exhausting. He said quietly, you're always chasing something. You're never satisfied. Clara's voice came next, soft but cutting. You tell me you're happy, she said, but you cry almost every time we talk. My aunt added, you push away advice. You think independence means isolation. Then my boss. We've noticed tension in your attitude at work, missed deadlines, emotional responses. I felt like the air was thinning, like the walls were closing inward. This wasn't concern. This was a courtroom. Every sentence was a charge. Too independent, too emotional. Too ambitious, too difficult, too much. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that changing careers wasn't instability, it was courage. That crying didn't make me broken. That ambition wasn't a crime, but my throat locked. And then my mother said the words that finally cracked something open inside me. "We don't recognize you anymore." Silence swallowed the room. I looked at each of them slowly, the people I trusted. The people who were supposed to protect me. They had planned this for weeks, maybe, on my birthday. The candles on my untouched cake leaned slightly to one side, one already falling loose. I swallowed the ache rising in my chest and forced a small, trembling smile. "So," I whispered, "this wasn't a birthday party." No one answered. It was a trial. The silence after my words didn't feel accidental. It felt approved. No one rushed to correct me. No one laughed awkwardly and said it had gotten out of hand. The banner still hung proudly behind them. "We love you enough to tell you the truth." As if cruelty dressed in soft language could become kindness. My mother reached for a folder on her lap, a folder. I stared at it, unable to process that my birthday had come with documentation. "We've written down examples," she said gently, like a teacher preparing to review a failed exam. "So we don't get emotional. Don't get emotional." I almost laughed at that. Daniel spoke first. He didn't look at me when he did. "I can't keep doing this," he said. "You're unpredictable. One day you're excited about your future. The next you're questioning everything. It's draining, draining." As if loving me had been a chore. "We fight constantly," he continued, "about money, about where we're headed. You won't just settle. There it was. He wanted comfortable, safe, smaller. "I think we need to break up," he finished quietly. "I can't fix you. Fix me." The words didn't land all at once. They slid under my skin slowly, like cold water filling my lungs. 5 years together, and he ended it in a folding chair, under a birthday banner. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I understood. Next was Clara. She clasped her hands together tightly. "I love you," she started, "but you're always in crisis mode. There's always something wrong. I'm tired. You don't see how much space you take up," she added. "It's like everything becomes about your struggles." My struggles. The ones I whispered to her at 2 a.m., the ones she begged me to share. "I feel like I'm constantly holding you together," she said. And suddenly, I understood something painful. She didn't see me as strong. She saw me as fragile, as someone she could feel superior to. My father cleared his throat. "You've embarrassed us," he said bluntly, "leaving a stable career, posting personal opinions online, living alone without a clear plan. Embarrassed." My mother nodded, eyes glossy but determined. "We raised you to be secure, practical. Lately, you've become reckless. Because I chose passion over predictability. Because I refused to marry at 25. Because I didn't ask permission." My brother leaned forward. "You think you're better than everyone," he said. "Like you're enlightened because you moved to the city and started freelancing. But you're barely surviving." "Barely surviving?" My aunt sighed dramatically. "You need therapy before you rue. In every relationship you have. And finally, Mr. Reynolds, I've been patient," he said, "but your focus has slipped. You're distracted. If this continues, we may need to discuss a leave of absence. A leave of absence." From the job that paid my rent, 6 voices, 6 verdicts, 6 knives, and not one person asked how I felt. The cake sat untouched on the coffee table. The chocolate frosting gleamed under the light, mocking me with its sweetness. I had written 28 and thriving, in gold icing when I ordered it. Thriving. I studied their faces carefully. They weren't angry. They weren't even cruel in their tone. They were calm, certain, united. This wasn't spontaneous. It was coordinated. Conversations had happened behind my back. Stories exchanged. Grievances compared. I had been discussed like a problem to solve. Something strange happened inside me then. The panic that had been rising stilled. The tears waiting behind my eyes retreated. Instead of breaking, I began listening, really listening. To the patterns, to the repetition, to the subtle relief in their expressions as they spoke. They weren't trying to save me. They were trying to reshape me, shrink me, sand down the edges that made them uncomfortable. Daniel wanted easier. Clara wanted smaller. My parents wanted obedient. My boss wanted compliant. And when I refused to be those things, they gathered in a circle and called it love. I folded my hands in my lap and nodded slowly. "Are you done?" I asked quietly. My mother hesitated. We're doing this because we care. I know, I said, and the calmness in my voice unsettled them. I stood carefully, smoothing my dress. I appreciate the effort. I continued. It must have taken time to plan this. No one responded. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Clara avoided my eyes. I picked up the cake box and opened it slowly. The candles were crooked. One had fallen into the frosting. I fixed it gently. Then I closed the lid again. Thank you, I said softly, looking at each of them in turn, for showing me exactly who you are. Confusion flickered across my mother's face. That's not what this is, it is, I interrupted, still calm. And that's okay, because in that moment, something crystal clear settled in my chest. This wasn't the night I lost everything. This was the night I stopped pretending I had it. Daniel stood abruptly. So that's it. You're not even going to fight for us. I looked at him. Fight for what? A man who announced our breakup like a diagnosis. A family who needed witnesses to criticize me. No, I said gently. I'm not. The air shifted. The power dynamic they'd carefully constructed wavered. I walked toward the door slowly, my heels steady against the floor. Behind me, my mother called my name. I didn't turn around. 6 relationships ended that night, and strangely, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. The morning after my birthday felt unnaturally silent. No apology texts. No, we didn't mean it like that. Just a single message from Daniel. I hope you understand. I didn't reply. Instead, I packed, not dramatically, not in tears, just methodically, like someone rearranging furniture in a room that no longer fit. By the end of the week, I had signed a lease across town. Smaller place, bigger windows. No one knew the address except the moving company and my bank. I changed my number. I didn't block them at first. I just let the silence stretch. It told me everything. The first few nights alone were the hardest, not because I missed them, but because the echo of their words tried to settle in my chest. Unstable, draining, embarrassing, reckless. I replayed the intervention over and over, searching for proof they were right. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe ambition did look like instability to people who feared change. Maybe crying on the phone didn't make me weak. Maybe it made me human. Instead of drowning in the noise, I did something they never expected. I booked therapy, not because my aunt said I needed it, but because I wanted clarity, not correction. In that quiet office with beige walls and soft lighting, I told the story without defending anyone. I said the words out loud, the banner, the circle, the folder. My therapist didn't gasp. She asked a simple question. Who benefits from you believing you're broken? The answer came faster than I expected. They did. If I believed I was unstable, I'd cling to Daniel. If I believed I was draining, I'd shrink around Clara. If I believed I was reckless, I'd run back to my parents' safety. If I believed I was lucky to even have them, I'd never outgrow them. It wasn't love. It was control disguised as concern. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me focused. I restructured my work schedule, took on freelance projects that scared me, pitched designs to clients I would have once considered out of my league. I stopped apologizing in emails. I raised my rates when Mr. Reynolds emailed about my leave of absence. I surprised him by resigning first. The panic came after I hit send, but so did something else, relief. Without the noise of their opinions, I could finally hear my own thoughts clearly. And they weren't chaotic, they were ambitious. I worked late nights at my small kitchen table, city lights flickering outside the window. My savings dipped dangerously low at one point. I sold old clothes, canceled subscriptions, learned how to stretch groceries creatively. But for the first time, the struggle felt chosen, and that made all the difference. Months passed, my portfolio grew. One client referred me to another, then another. My calendar began filling faster than I could manage. I built a small online presence, carefully curated, intentional, not reckless, not attention-seeking, just honest, and people responded, not with criticism, with respect. Somewhere along the way, I noticed something unexpected. I wasn't crying every week anymore, not because I was suppressing feelings, but because there was nothing suffocating me. Clara texted 3 months later. I miss you, can we talk? I didn't reply immediately. I read it twice. Then I set my phone down. Missing me wasn't the same as valuing me. Daniel called from a private number one evening. I let it ring. My mother left a voicemail around Thanksgiving. We just want to make sure you're okay. The irony almost made me smile. I was more than okay. I was building slowly, deliberately. I started going to the gym, not to change my body, but to feel strong in it. I redecorated my apartment with warm tones and plants I managed not to kill. I hosted small dinners with new acquaintances who didn't know me before. They met me as I was. Not as a project, not as a problem, just as a person. One night, nearly a year after the intervention, I found the pink birthday invitation tucked into a book I hadn't opened in months. The edges were bent now, faded. I held it for a long time. That night had felt like humiliation, but it had been exposure. They exposed their expectations, and in doing so, they exposed my freedom. 6 relationships ended that night. But in the space they left behind, something extraordinary had room to grow. Confidence without permission. Ambition without apology. Peace without approval. I didn't need revenge fueled by anger. Success was quieter than that. More precise and far more satisfying. By the time my next birthday approached, I wasn't the girl sitting in a circle waiting for validation. I was the woman who had learned something dangerous. The moment you stop begging to be understood, you become unstoppable. A year changes you in ways mirrors can't measure. On the morning of my 29th birthday, sunlight poured through the wide windows of my apartment. My apartment, touching the framed designs on the walls, the polished wood table, the quiet evidence of a life built intentionally. There were no banners, no folders, no circle of judgment, just calm. I brewed my coffee slowly, then opened my laptop and reread the email I had sent 3 weeks earlier. Subject: birthday dinner in my place, 7 p.m. It had gone to 6 people: Mom, Dad, Daniel, Clara, my brother. Mr. Reynolds, simple message, no explanations. I'd love for you to come. I think it's time we talked properly. They had all responded yes. Curiosity is a powerful hook. By 7 that evening, my apartment glowed with soft lighting. The dining table was set carefully, elegant but understated. Real plates, linen napkins, a centerpiece of white lilies. The faint scent of chocolate drifted from the kitchen. The doorbell rang. One by one, they stepped inside. My mother's eyes scanned the space, taking in the artwork, the furniture, the quiet sophistication. My father nodded stiffly. Daniel looked older. Clara looked uncertain. Mr. Reynolds seemed uncomfortable outside an office setting. They weren't seated in a circle. They were seated at my table. I stood at the head. Thank you for coming, I said calmly. No one mentioned last year. They didn't need to. It lingered in the room like a ghost. Dinner began politely. Small talk, weather, work, neutral territory. I let them ease into the illusion of normalcy. Then I set down my fork. I invited you because I owe you something, I said. They stiffened slightly. I owe you gratitude. Confusion flickered across Daniel's face. My mother blinked. Last year, I continued evenly. You threw me an intervention for my birthday. No one interrupted. You said you loved me enough to tell me the truth. I met each of their eyes in turn. You were right about one thing. I did need clarity. Daniel shifted in his seat. That's not. Let me finish, I said gently. The authority in my voice silenced him. To you, I said, looking at Daniel. Thank you for leaving. I thought losing 5 years would destroy me. It didn't. It showed me I was trying to earn love instead of receive it. He looked down. To you, Clara, I continued. Thank you for calling me draining. I realized I was sharing my struggles with someone who saw them as inconvenience instead of intimacy. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. To my parents, I said softly, thank you for being honest about your embarrassment. I finally understood that your approval was conditional, and I stopped chasing it. My mother's eyes welled with tears. My father said nothing. To my brother, I added, thank you for pointing out that I was barely surviving. You were right, I was surviving in spaces that didn't fit me. I turned to Mr. Reynolds, and thank you for questioning my focus. It pushed me to resign. That was the best professional decision I've ever made. He frowned. You resigned impulsively. No, I said calmly, I resigned strategically. Silence settled over the table. There was no anger in my tone that unsettled them more than shouting ever could have. I stood and walked into the kitchen. When I returned, I carried a cake, chocolate, smooth frosting, perfectly centered candles. I placed it gently in the middle of the table. In gold lettering it read, "Thank you for ending what I didn't have the courage to." No one moved. No one spoke. "I used to think revenge meant making you feel small," I said quietly, "but the truth is I don't need that." I straightened. "I forgave you the moment I realized I no longer needed you." The words weren't sharp. They were steady. My mother finally spoke, voice trembling. "We were trying to help." "I know," I replied, "but help without respect is control." Daniel cleared his throat. "Are you happy?" I looked around my apartment, at the life I built without their permission. "Yes," I said simply. "I am," and that was the sharpest thing I could have said, because they could see it, in my posture. In my voice, in the absence of apology. I lit the candles myself. 29. No one sang. I didn't ask them to. After a moment, I blew them out. "I won't keep you long," I said, picking up my glass. "I just wanted closure." Clara looked like she wanted to speak, maybe to apologize. But I didn't leave space for it. Closure doesn't require consensus. I walked them to the door one by one. Polite, calm, unshaken. When the last of them stepped into the hallway, my mother hesitated. "We're still your family," she whispered. I smiled gently, and I'm still me. The door closed softly, no slamming, no drama, just finality. I leaned back against it and exhaled slowly. 6 relationships ended the year before. But tonight wasn't about endings. It was about ownership of my choices, of my growth, of my peace. I walked back to the table, cut myself a slice of cake, and carried it to the balcony. The city lights shimmered below like quiet applause. This time, I celebrated alone, not because I had no one, but because I no longer needed an audience to prove I was enough.